My name is Lucy. Just a few days ago, I received a voicemail from my father that shattered our long-standing holiday tradition. His voice was cold and matter of fact, Thanksgiving is off. You'll hear from my lawyer. It was like a thunderbolt on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday afternoon. A few years back, I would have been in tears, desperately calling him back, pleading to know what I'd done wrong and scrambling to make things right. But this time, I just stared at the phone screen, typed understood, and placed the phone face down on the table. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't shed a tear. Instead, I opened my laptop. For 6 years, my name has been linked to a $320,000 mortgage on a luxurious lakeside villa. It's a property my parents love to show off on their social media, but they've never managed to keep up with the payments without my help. While they posted pictures of their fancy vacations and expensive dinners, I quietly transferred money every month to keep the bank at bay. After that voicemail, I decided to take action. I called the bank and inquired about removing my name from the mortgage. The bank representative pulled up my file, confirmed that my stable income and good credit score were the reasons the loan was approved, and warned me that they'd have to re-evaluate my parents' financial situation. Undeterred, I signed the necessary documents. 24 hours later, my phone was bombarded with missed calls. There were 58 missed calls in total and a panicked message from their lawyer, begging me to call back. All of this was a direct result of my father canceling Thanksgiving and my decision to change something he never thought I'd have the courage to do. Let me step back in time to about 3 weeks before that fateful voicemail. I was sitting at my parents' dining table in their upscale suburb, pushing the salad around my plate as my mother, Isabella, started to speak. Isabella always takes a deep, dramatic breath before she asks for something. "Lucy, we need to talk about Thanksgiving," she said, putting down her fork with a serious look on her face. My father, Victor, continued to cut his steak, avoiding eye contact with me. "We've booked a private island in the Caribbean this year. It's going to be an unforgettable trip, but the island can only accommodate 4 people," she said. I was taken aback. 4 people? I repeated, not fully understanding. She nodded, her eyes focused on her napkin. "It'll be me, your father, your brother Jake, and his fiancée. You understand, right? There just isn't enough space for everyone." At the other end of the table, Jake was slouching in his chair, scrolling through his phone as if this conversation had nothing to do with him. Victor finally looked up at me and added, "You're always so swamped with work. This is a chance for you to catch up on some rest." I could feel my face getting hot. "You mean catch up on the money I've been pouring into this house?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but it came out sharper than I intended. Isabella frowned as if I'd broken some unwritten family rule. "Lucy, don't start. You know we're grateful," she said, but I couldn't recall the last time either of them had actually thanked me. I started listing all the financial help I'd provided. I've been paying the mortgage every month, covered the electricity bill when it was overdue, and even paid off Jake's credit card when he overspent on a shopping spree. And now, they were going on a lavish holiday without me. Jake finally looked up from his phone and rolled his eyes. "Family supports family. You earn more than we do. Why are you acting like a victim?" I almost laughed. They always dismissed my job as a successful graphic designer as nothing more than a fun little hobby. But the moment they needed money, I was their saving grace. "I earn enough to support my own life, not to bankroll all of you," I said firmly. Victor slammed his fork on the table, making the plates rattle. "You live alone in a small apartment in the city. You don't have the responsibilities of a family. Designing logos for a startup isn't real work. We didn't raise you to be so stingy with your family." His words stung, but I knew he was wrong. My job had kept their dream home from being foreclosed on more than once. Isabella gave me that disappointed look she was so good at. "This is exactly why we didn't tell you earlier. You always turn everything into a money-related drama." I stared at her in disbelief. I'm the one taking money seriously because I'm the only one who understands its value. The room fell silent. It was that heavy silence where everyone takes sides. Jake shrugged and went back to his phone. Victor leaned back, crossing his arms. If you can't be happy for us going on this trip without you, maybe you should skip Thanksgiving this year. We'll figure out the bills ourselves. I knew it was a lie. They'd never figured out the bills on their own, they'd always guilt me into bailing them out. On my drive back to my apartment that night, the city lights blurred on my windshield, and I had a painful realization. It wasn't just about not being invited to Thanksgiving. I'd never truly been part of the family as a daughter. I'd been the family's financial lifesaver. Little did I know then that this dinner would be the last time I'd leave their house feeling powerless. The next time they asked for more, I'd take a stand. A week after that dinner, during my lunch break at work, I was aimlessly scrolling through Instagram, trying to forget the awkwardness of that family dinner. Then, I saw it. A perfectly filtered photo of my parents, Jake, and his fiancée, all smiling on a tropical beach under a banner that read, "Happy Thanksgiving." The caption said, "So thankful for this time with our closest family." Family is everything. I froze. It was the holiday I'd been excluded from, and there they were, looking like the perfect family. Just then, a notification popped up. It was a text from Jake. "Hey, can you transfer $200? We're running low on cash for souvenirs, and my card isn't working. Please send it quickly." I stared at the message for a long time. There was no hello, no thank you for all the times I'd helped before. It was just a demand. I typed a response, deleted it, and re-typed it several times. Finally, I sent, "I can't help this time. I hope you all have a great time." 3 dots appeared, indicating he was about to reply, but then they disappeared. There was no response. A couple of days later, I saw a long post on Facebook from Isabella. It said, "Sometimes, the people you sacrifice the most for are the first to turn their backs on you. But family always sticks together. The rest will show their true colors." The comments flooded in with people saying how wonderful my parents were and how ungrateful I was. I scrolled through the comments, my face getting hot with anger and numbness at the same time. They'd painted me as the bad guy, and no one knew about the years of financial support I'd provided. For the first time, I decided to fight back. I started collecting evidence. I took screenshots of all the bank transfers, the Instagram post, Jake's text messages, and Isabella's Facebook post. I also went through my banking app and saw the long history of payments I'd made to keep their lifestyle afloat. It was a clear pattern of them using me as their personal ATM. One night, while I was cooking dinner, Isabella called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but an old habit made me pick up. She started with small talk, asking about my work and if I was eating well. Then she sighed and said, "Lucy, we just got the property tax bill. It's much higher than we expected. We're in a really tight spot. We need you to pay this bill just this one time until we get back on our feet." I could hear the TV in the background and the sound of ice in a glass. I imagined Victor sitting in his armchair, waiting for me to say yes. For the first time, I didn't rush to answer. "No," I said firmly. My own voice surprised me. "I've gone through all the money I've spent on you over the past few years. Mortgage payments, utility bills, emergency expenses. I'm done." Isabella's voice turned cold. "How dare you keep track of everything? We're your parents. You wouldn't have the life you have now if it weren't for us." Then Victor's voice came on the line. "So, now you think you're too good to help your family? You play the hero when it suits you and abandon us when it doesn't? You're tearing this family apart." I could feel my hand shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "I've paid more than enough. If you can't afford the house without my help, maybe you should talk to the bank instead of me." There was a moment of stunned silence, and then Victor exploded. "If you're going to turn your back on us, don't bother coming to Thanksgiving. See what happens when we stop relying on you. I took a deep breath and said calmly, okay. Then be done with it. Isabella gasped as if I'd struck her. Victor muttered something about my ingratitude and lawyers and hung up. After the call, I was still shaking. I looked at myself in the dark TV screen and saw a woman I hardly recognized. A woman who had finally said no. That night, I found the old email from the bank when we'd first signed the mortgage. My name was right there, a co-signer, the one with the good credit that made their dream home possible. I read the fine print carefully, thinking about all the times they'd promised to handle things on their own and then dumped the problems on me. I realized that they'd never thought I'd ever stop being their safety net. When that voicemail from my father finally arrived, it was like a wake-up call rather than a threat. I listened to it, felt a sense of determination, and then took action. I reached out to the bank, signed the documents to remove my name from the mortgage, and waited for the consequences. After I posted all the evidence on social media, things changed. People who had blindly supported my parents started to see the truth. My parents' post disappeared, but the calls from them, Jake, and their lawyer continued. My voicemail was filled with my mother crying, my father ranting and pleading, and Jake asking me to fix everything. But this time, I wasn't going to cave in. A few days later, my mother texted me, asking to meet in person at a coffee shop downtown. I agreed, but I also invited my grandmother, Amelia. Amelia was my mother's mother, a strong-willed woman who had always seen through my parents' behavior. When I walked into the coffee shop, my parents and Jake were already sitting at a table. My father had his arms crossed, looking angry. My mother's eyes were red as if she'd been crying all morning, and Jake was avoiding my gaze. I sat down and waited for someone to start. My father was the first to speak. This has gone too far. You've embarrassed us in public and blindsided us with the bank. You think you're a hero, but you're destroying this family. My mother leaned forward, her voice trembling. We're about to lose our home, Lucy. The bank is asking for documents we don't have, and they're talking about refinancing. We can't afford it without you. I looked at my coffee and said, you mean you can't afford the house you chose? You put my name on the mortgage because you knew I'd say yes. You made your lifestyle dependent on my guilt. That's your choice, not mine. Jake finally spoke up, his voice small. Lucy, we know you've helped, but posting all that stuff and going to the bank behind our backs made us look bad. I took a thin folder out of my bag and placed it on the table. I didn't make you look bad. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering up for you. Inside the folder were all the printed records of my financial support. My father flipped through the papers, getting angrier with each page. You've been keeping records? What kind of daughter does that? I met his glare and said, the kind who's been told for years that she's overreacting and dramatic every time she says no. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining this. Just then, Amelia walked in. She sat down and said, Victor, you dragged me into this the moment you started using Lucy as your personal bank. I've seen the evidence, and I know what's going on. As of last week, I've changed my will. My beach house, my savings, and the trust fund will all go to Lucy. You three are no longer beneficiaries. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face turned pale. You can't do that. We're your children, she whispered. Amelia looked at her with a sad but determined expression. And she is my granddaughter. I won't leave my life's work to people who use guilt and manipulation to exploit their own child. I'm not punishing you, I'm just refusing to reward this behavior. My father leaned forward, his voice menacing. Do you know what this will make us look like? What will people say when they find out we lost the house and the inheritance? Amelia didn't flinch. Maybe they'll finally see the truth. That you built your life on money that wasn't yours. Jake looked at me with a newfound understanding. So, that's it? You're just going to walk away and let everything fall apart? I stood up, picked up my folder, and said, no. I'm walking away and letting you face the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. I said my goodbyes and left the coffee shop with Amelia. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back to see if they were sorry. I knew that I had finally taken control of my life. In the weeks that followed, the silence from my parents was replaced by a flurry of text messages and calls. But I stopped reacting to them. Eventually, the noise died down. I heard from a cousin that my parents had put the house up for sale, claiming they were downsizing due to high taxes. But the truth was that they could no longer afford it without my support. Jake reached out to me later, asking to meet for coffee. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. He told me that he was working multiple jobs to pay his own bills and help our parents with their new, smaller apartment. He said, "I always thought you'd come to the rescue. But when you didn't, I realized that we were the problem, not you. I'm really sorry." I didn't forgive him right away. I told him that if he wanted to change, it was up to him. I wasn't going to be his backup plan anymore. But our conversation was a start. Through all of this, Amelia became a constant support. She called me every week, checking on my life. At work, I finally had control over my finances. I paid my own bills, saved money, and joined a support group for people with similar family issues. Listening to their stories made me realize that I wasn't alone. There were still moments when I questioned my decision, especially during holidays. But then I'd remember my father's cold voicemail, my mother's false Facebook post, and Jake's self-centered demands. I knew that walking away was the right thing to do. Family is supposed to be about love and support, not exploitation. I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries and say no. I may have lost the version of family I once had, but I've gained a life that belongs to me.